at that stage, I was like, can I do this? And there was a lot of anxiety making a career change from dabbling in technology to say, okay, I'm making technology my career.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Awesoming's podcast, where we highlight people pursuing their definition of, you guessed it, awesome. So buckle up and get ready for some more success story adventures and failures from Kentucky's tech and entrepreneur community. Hey y'all, thanks for tuning back into this episode of the Awesoming Podcast. I am, again, I haven't said it in a while, but I'm actually really excited for this conversation. I'm getting to sit around one of the only original G's, yes, not original gangster, but original Gary's, of the Awesome Inc. community. He was someone I met when I joined the team a handful of years ago, about 4 years actually. It's kind of weird to think about. I met you in a cabin in Gatlinburg for our summer retreat, and we were partners for something. And I was a bit over the top, and you were like, dude, calm down.
We have different personalities.
We do. You can quickly tell that Gary is crazy extroverted, and I'm very introverted.
I'm very loud.
You're very loud. And again, what I've known about you, Gary, is you have this allure to you that you're this mysterious guy that you can do a little bit of everything from code to lead. You're a crazy fitness guy from what I know. You can like run literal miles around people, which is really impressive. And I feel like every time we have spoken in the last 4 years, you're on to the next thing, the next startup. You're working at the next startup. You're building your own product, which is really cool. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna pass the ball over to you here in a second. Would love to hear your background that led you up to the Awesome Inc. Bootcamp. So I can know some fitness stuff all around the country, but give us the journey from where you were to the Awesome Inc. Bootcamp, I believe in 2013 or 2014.
Yeah. Well, it was, a really long journey because I was 37 or 38. I can't remember exactly. So I wasn't exactly young going into the boot camp when I made that decision. But yeah, as you mentioned, fitness is my background. I say fitness and I think of like fitness influencer, but just to, which I was not by any means.
Oh, man.
But my background educationally is in exercise physiology. I came to Kentucky from Nebraska to pursue a career in strength and conditioning. So I got my master's degree in kinesiology and health promotion, and I worked as a volunteer grad assistant for men's and women's swimming and men's soccer as a strength coach at UK. I realized pretty quickly, I love all things more sports and fitness, but I realized pretty quickly that career wasn't exactly for me. And at the same time, I was already building and starting to get into building websites. So this would have been 2002, 2003 timeframe. And I realized that in order to kind of expand my capacity or ability to impact people, the web was, a way to do that. And so I launched my very first kind of fitness website in 2003. It was a little bit of a journey to get there, and I ended up, just building it myself. It took a long time. I had to kind of figure things out myself. But I still, at that time, was focused on a career in health. And my first job at a graduate school was in public health. And I worked on this thing called Steps to a Healthier US. And so we focused specifically on obesity, diabetes, et cetera. But even there, I found myself building the website for the program, in Colorado where I was working at the time. And so I just kind of always been this person someone came to for technical help, or, this was 2005. So just leading kind of in that technical side. And I realized that, more and more of my time was spent building things on the web than it was, coaching people. And so I guess the genesis of all this is I've always tried to marry those two. So my health and behavior desires to help people live better lives. And so kind of my mission still today is I hope to help people live happier and healthier lives by any means necessary, but specifically using technology as kind of a tool that has helped me. So jumping forward some years, I joined a startup in Chicago that was focused on delivering obesity support, but via Skype. And, we used Fitbits and all kinds of data collection. And this was 2012. I was there for 5 years. And it was actually towards the end of that, I was working as a product manager and a data analyst at Retrofit. And I just kind of had, the ability to be a good product manager because I understood the domain and stuff, but I actually lacked still a little bit of technical skills. And so the CTO actually, we were pretty close and worked together every day. And he came to me at one point and, he was saying, hey, you're a good product manager, but, you're limited. He said, at the time I was actually programming. So I was, programming in Python and R and new HTML and CSS, but real basic surface level. And he said, to be a great product manager, you probably need to improve your skills. So I took his advice to heart. And that was in 2016. It was kind of the perfect timing for me. I had been at that startup for 4.5 years. And so I quit and joined the boot camp because they just were launching that boot camp. And so that's how I got to the boot camp.
Right on. That's cool. That's cool. It's funny. I obviously I have some things I want to talk to you about. As you'd give me background and information that maybe I didn't know, my natural instinct is to say, let's go off this tangent. I'm going to ask one question. What is a hot take on modern health that most people have wrong from your background? Could be exercise related, could be diet related, could be whatever.
I think the easiest one is that there's one diet for everyone. So the diet world or the nutrition world is just full of just a ton of garbage, as we probably all know. But then there's like a religious fever around some of these diets. And, it may work for one person and they're like, hey, keto worked for me. And it may have worked for them, but it doesn't mean it works for everyone. And so the one diet for all is, I think just really bad advice. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
A couple of my buddies, we laugh at Liver King and some of these other guys were like, this is ridiculous. You eat raw meat,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go to open that can of worms and go down there, but we saw that. We're like, this is wild. Yeah. Okay. Now back to the conversation. So again, you were here in Kentucky, you left this startup and you applied to the boot camp. So what was it that attracted you to, hey, I'm going to be a guinea pig in this brand new program. Like I'm going to try and improve. Walk me through how all of that started. How'd you even hear of Awesome Inc. and the boot camp? What was all that back like, again, almost a decade ago at this point?
So let me answer the first question about the boot camp first. To be honest, there were two things that allowed me the confidence to join the boot camp. One is they had like a job guarantee. And so I knew,
still have it.
So I knew like, okay, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to I actually took 3 months off before the boot camp too. Okay. So, I was committing to 6 months of, I worked part-time, but for the most part, I, got rid of my full-time salary. So I knew that there was a 6-month period I was committing, but worst case scenario, I had a little bit of time after that, but, it wouldn't be too bad. So that was part of the thing that helped me make the jump. The other is, and you could probably respect this, I knew Nick Such, I trusted Nick Such. And so, knowing he was kind of leading the charge on that effort gave me just confidence at the time.
I tell Nick Such very frequently, and the people on our team, if I ever did anything to actually make Nick upset, I would quit that same day. Yeah, he's the best guy. Yeah. And word of mouth marketing and the people you trust have so much sway. So yeah, that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. And so so to answer the second, how did I hear about Awesome Inc.? I think initially in the very beginning, I heard about Awesome Inc. because of Nick. He had this thing he was a part of called Bike Kentucky, or it's something similar to that. I bought a t-shirt from it, and so I heard about him, and then tangentially about Awesome Inc. Where I really became involved was in 2012. A person I know, I'd written a book about startups, and Awesome Inc. brought him in to do a book, part of his book tour, to do a speaking gig. And so I came to watch his talk that night. That was the like real first program I participated in. And then I met with Nick again because he's the only one I knew here at the time. A few weeks later, and I just asked him like, what can I do to get involved? And then he kind of shared different programs that were going on at the time. And so I kind of participated in many programs at that point.
Right on.
Yeah.
And is Bradfeld?
It is, yeah.
Right on.
I think it was Startup Communities at that time.
That was one of the first books I read post-college. So
really?
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. All the principles that he puts out in that book, Awesome Inc. lives into many of them, right? Being entrepreneur-led, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think also one of the cool things, we have a different perspective than maybe people who have not worked on the Awesome Inc. team or even worked at a startup or maybe have gone through some program, like the boot camp or an accelerator incubator. But it is cool to see people that have been around for not a number of years, not 3 or 4, but hey, we're past the decade mark and we're going on that 20-year vision, that Brad says in the book of, a healthy startup community takes about 20 years and you reset that calendar or that clock every single day. So
yeah, now that you say a decade, I guess 2012 was a decade ago.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I just thought of that. Yeah, I hadn't really realized that. I think, it's kind of funny because Awesome Inc. has evolved over time too. And so programs have evolved. And, I think the very first actual program I participated in was like a weekend is either 1 or 2 day course on iPhone development.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those were a hit way back then, man. That's cool to hear.
And I really didn't want to do iPhone development, but I wanted to do a program.
Sure.
And so I participated in that. And then, I never built an app on iPhone using Swift or any of that stuff. I have since built using React Native.
Gotcha. Yeah.
After the boot camp.
After
I learned React. After the boot camp.
Huge thing we do nowadays.
Yeah.
So we're going to fast forward a little bit.
Yep.
After the boot camp, you co-founded a company, Upper 90, I believe. What was your intention to? Again, you mentioned you were with Retrofit before the boot camp. Well, yeah. What was your intention from learning to code now to start your own company?
Silliness, maybe. I don't know.
I like that. I've never gotten that before. Silliness.
Being a naive person. No, I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. Like even before I joined Retrofit, I was, self-employed and had a company, Endurance Base Camp, that I ran, for many years, just, by myself. But Upper 90 actually did evolve out of the boot camp. So there was another boot camp participant, Thomas Cothran, who he and I just over the boot camp, had many conversations, over lunch and sandwiches and stuff. And his brother, maybe somewhat ironically, was working with the men's soccer team at UK at the time as a grad student. And he had built this like wellness tracking application that the soccer team was using. Thomas built upon that in the boot camp. And so when we finished, we both looked at like other jobs and possibilities, but, we both had entrepreneurial kind of spirits. And so we're like, could we take this thing, we called it Pie Coach, could we take this thing and build a business out of it? And so that was the initial effort. And so Upper 90 did that. And then ultimately, Thomas and I and John started another company called Venture Tech. And Venture Tech was a little more consulting. So we tried to focus on 3 areas: law, health, and fitness. Thomas was a former lawyer prior to the boot camp. And we did consulting. So we helped other people build applications. And that went really well. And we had, we ended up building that agency maybe too good because we had some customers that got really big. And then we ultimately became employees of some of those businesses.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
And again, just to keep on with what you just said about a couple of your other companies, over the last decade, I mentioned this a few minutes ago, you've continued to want to be a coach, and you've also bounced around the startup space. You've worked with the guys at Zone Tracks when we pitched out the Lexington Legend Stadium a couple years ago. You have done a lot, I believe, with Moulathon and Mac and another one of our fellowship companies, and with VividCharts here in Lexington. You've had a lot. Talk about like the fun, but also like the lessons you've learned about being an entrepreneur and bouncing around. And you work here, then okay, cool, I'm on to the next thing. Or hey, I was working at this company, but this new thing really enticed me and I wanted to go there because, well, yeah, we'd just love to hear some more of the Gary Ditsch story of the last decade.
Yeah. Bouncing around sounds like I can't commit.
Yeah, I definitely don't want that. You definitely do commit.
I think that's true in the startup world for sure, especially, okay, so let's maybe classify like what we mean when we say startup.
That's great.
So, there's this startup when it's like an idea, and then we're trying to like even understand if there's a valid idea. Like we're not even thinking about product market fit. Like we're just like, there's an idea and like, can this maybe generate a few dollars? And then there's, okay, we've raised, $10 million and, we've maybe have a product. We maybe haven't found product market fit, but, we're kind of at that stage. And then there's, startups that are like, multiple rounds and they actually have product market fit and they're trying to scale and grow. And so what I would say is like, I live in that first world a ton. So Peter Thiel calls it, 0 to 1, I think is his book, right? And it's been years since I read it, but the taking something from nothing to one is kind of where I fit. It's what I enjoy. But the reality is it's also super tough because getting from 0 to 1 is much more difficult than going from like 1 to 10, in my opinion. And so just the nature of that, a lot of times you unvalidate ideas pretty quickly. And so 0 doesn't go to 1. And so like you go find the next 0. I would say, VividCharts, where I'm at now, is a little bit different. Like they had validated the idea much more than some of the other places and things I've done. And so that was a little bit comforting to me. And so when I joined and, they were at a space where they wanted to go 1 to 10 was actually pretty exciting for me.
One thing that you mentioned, I don't hear people often acknowledge is, your skill set pretty well. Hey, I'm the guy that goes from the 0 to 1 phase. I help a company or an idea get off the ground to its first iteration, to its first sales, to the first product market fit test. How did you find that out? That specifically was where you excelled?
Maybe by chance, I think I understood. Some of my past colleagues may say it's because I don't work well with big groups. That could be it. But also part of it is like, I have an entrepreneurial spirit, which doesn't mean that I always want to start things. But one thing about companies that are in the early stages is you get the opportunity to kind of dip your toes in everything. So I've done marketing, I've done development, I've done, everything there is across the board. Customer success, I've done it all. I've had those opportunities because I've been at, smaller companies. If I was working for, a Fortune 100 company or a big tech company, most of the time you don't get the ability to do that. And I'm just curious, right? I think if there's anything that probably describes me in the work that I want to do, it's I'm curious and, going to work and knowing that today the task list is going to be, check off 1 through 10, and tomorrow it's going to be 11 through 20. And then, like I would get bored in about 2 weeks and I would have to find something else to do. And so I just know that spending, 40 to 80 hours a week doing that just wouldn't be good for me. And part of it is just opportunity. Like we live in Kentucky. Prior to this, I lived in Nebraska. I have lived in Colorado and Texas and a few other places, but most of the places I've lived haven't had really big tech companies. And so the opportunities are kind of early or, smaller sized companies. And so I've never had, now we do so much remote working, the opportunities is probably there, but like I've never even entertained the idea of working for like a Google or Facebook because I wouldn't want to be in those places. And so location does matter too.
That's good. Yeah, that's a unique perspective. I think, even though I've been around our team for a while and I've met young guys who run their companies, I've met really successful entrepreneurs in the Kentucky Entrepreneur Hall of Fame. It's just funny to hear that, like what you do really well, and you've chosen to want to do that. Again, the whole checklist day to day, man, some people love, you tell me what to do and I'm going to crush it. Some people are like, man, I want to figure this out. And then, I get bored once I do. So again, just to continue what we've talked about, you've held consistent roles, again, in early stage companies, usually as their director of product. I'll be honest, I found that title on LinkedIn. It was really easy. What the heck does that role entail? That's some of these terms that maybe if you're not a developer, you don't know what that means. But from your experience, what has that role entailed? And maybe what's the level of detail or skill that is needed to be in that role to help companies, again, get from that 0 to 1 stage?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually have people ask me, like, what does product mean? Because when I say, I'm in product, I think many people hear me say project.
Okay.
Like I'm a project manager instead of a product manager, or a director of product. I guess one way to say it is like, in every business, it's different also. And so in some product roles, you'll be pretty heavily in the marketing side of things and you'll do product marketing. I typically lean, and currently definitely lean, kind of on the technical product side. But generally when I think of product is, you're the CEO of that product. So you need to be able to help the product go to market. You need to be able to understand the market that you're selling into. And then you need to be able to identify how that product, solves the problem in that market. And then you need to take that knowledge and be able to take that knowledge and deliver the technology or, the widget or whatever it is your product is, be able to deliver that to the market. So that entails bringing on the engineering team, bringing on the success team that you need in order to deliver it. And so, someone once explained it to me as like the CEO of the products that you're delivering. Now, director of product in larger organizations typically have many product owners underneath them or many product managers. And so typically a product manager may have like 1 or 2 potentially products, and then the director kind of organizes all of those. But, working at companies that are 0 to 1, I typically am I have, even though I'm the product guy at companies, sometimes I'm the only product guy. But, right now we have a team of 7-ish when you count the engineers, which I work closely with.
You're so cool. Just wanted to say that. Tell me this, from your experience as an entrepreneur, what have you found to be successful in building a customer base?
Building a customer base.
I know that's vague, but you've had a lot of experience. So I kind of just want you to roll with it and, share some wisdom.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in today's world, my advice is probably just like gonna be flavored by like the most recent problems that I have. And so I have VividCharts, which I think about every day. I also have a company with a few partners called Keyframe Sports. And so it's a sports application. And, I think about it a lot. And I think in both cases, the world is so noisy. So in both cases, I know we have a product that solves the problem that the markets that we go into are trying to solve. But the world's so noisy. There's so many options out there that being able to be seen as like credible, especially as a startup, like, if you're just 3 guys, or in the case of Keyframe, we're like 4 guys. VividCharts, we're bigger, we're 25 people, but, the ability to have customers see you having the expertise they need and not just another email in their inbox, breaking through that, or not just another channel on Twitter or Instagram or something that serves them another ad. trying to stand apart is really difficult. And so, influencer marketing is really big nowadays. And partly the reason is because, influencers gain all this like credibility, for better or worse, but they gain all this credibility. And as a business, sometimes that's really hard. And that's why you see businesses reach out to these influencers and like kind of steal some of that
clout, so to speak.
Yeah, the juice that they got.
Yeah, that's good. One thing that I didn't plan to ask you, because we actually just spoke with Jason Mize pretty recently, again, another one of your comrades from the first boot camp. But there's a theme I've seen where people that have gone through this program, again, to come back to Awesome Inc., you've continued to come back and you've taught. I don't know off the top of my head if you've taught in the boot camp, but I know you've taught in a handful of the intro to web development courses where you teach adults. Why the heck have you done that?
I think my girlfriend asked that same question.
She's very insightful.
Yeah, because, I do have to give up, a couple nights a week to do that. Part of it is when I joined the boot camp, I was a little bit older. Actually, Jason and I were kind of, those people in the group at the time, coming to it a little bit later in life. There have now been, I've seen people much older than us, go through it, and it's pretty awesome to see. But I share that because at that stage, I was like, can I do this? And there was a lot of anxiety making a career change from dabbling in technology to say, okay, I'm making technology my career. One of the things going to the boot camp was I still didn't know for sure, like if I could. And so intro actually evolved out of a little bit of that thinking of what do people need to know prior to going to boot camp, and how can we give them the ability to taste if it's for them without making the boot camp commitment. And so, over time, just having discussions with Nick Such, that kind of evolved, and I just love it. So I started teaching the new class this week, the summer intro class. We have 11 people in there. We have everything from a high school student to someone who retired 5 years ago. And like the backgrounds in there are pretty varied. And it's fun to see everyone on the same level. And they're all thinking the same thing. Is this a career I want to pursue? And it gives them a pretty low level commitment ability to test that out. Some people go through the intro, go right into boot camp. That happened this last time. I think we have at least one, if not more. Some people get 3 weeks into intro and they're like, oh yeah, this ain't for me. Thank goodness I did the intro. And so part of the reason why I do that is just, wanting to help people get rid of some of that anxiety that I had, and feel more confident going into the boot camp.
Right on. That's good stuff. Yeah. That was more for me. That I just was curious. It's cool to see a pattern. Again, I think every third boot camp, someone comes back and teaches something. So it's just cool to see that started with the very first boot camp. So,
and selfishly, I'll say, like, as a product manager or director of product, like, I get to look at code, but I don't actually spend 10 hours a day programming. I love to program, but not programming every day, I worry that my skills will go away. So teaching also helps me just
stay sharp.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. C# actually. So we'll wrap up here. I wanted to know if, I don't know why I'm even asking this, but I kind of like it. If you had a dream venture startup of your own, what would it be?
That's really interesting. It would have to be in the health space. After I left Retrofit, I started this program online called Happier and Healthier You. And the idea was it's still out there. You can go to it, happierandhealthieryou.com. I assume this website still works. But the idea was to take these lessons I learned at Retrofit, just over time, working with people with fitness and health behaviors and putting it into a program. I would love, and some of the things that I've been like really passionate about since then are mental health. I would love to create, and there's a ton of companies out there doing it now, but I would love to create some sort of monitoring program that allowed people to pursue their best self be their awesomest, right? Pursue awesome, I think is one of the laws here. But be their best self. The thing that has always stopped me from doing that with the remote monitoring, the mental health and everything is just the business models. It's really unclear to me how the business models work in that. However, I think that's changing the way that healthcare is distributed now. So maybe, I'm still young. I got at least 3 to 10 more startups in my lifetime. So
that's awesome. I love to hear that.
So one of them will, be that ultimate startup.
Right on. That's super cool. Well, Gary, last thing, we try to sign off in a pretty consistent manner. What's a piece of advice that you'd want to give to fellow entrepreneurs or someone who has an idea and they just have not made the plunge yet?
I would say that's a good question. I mean, the advice you want to say is like, just go do it. That's not always the best advice for people. So I wouldn't say that. But I would say don't give up on it. So just because today isn't the right time doesn't mean like in 6 months, you might have the opportunity where it is the right time. So just because today isn't the day to jump in head first, like don't let that idea disappear.
Good stuff. Well, Gary, appreciate the time. I don't know if Kevin has told you about the Awesome Inc. Run Club, but every Friday we go out and run about a 5K. So I want you to show up at one.
I did not know about it. I might be there.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Awesome Inc.'s podcast. And another quick thank you to Lee Rosevear and a few members from our community who provide the music that you hear in this show. Lastly, give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. Or even better, come on down to our space. Come be a part of our community and get plugged in, and let's start something awesome together. You guys rock. We'll see you next time.